I know Sebastian well. Listen to him. He's with us.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Who do you want on your side on the day after an election? Yeah, you want Rudy Giuliani. You want to have Jay Sekulow. You want to have Jenna Ellis. Oh, she'll be with us in the next hour, the president's personal lawyers. But you want an organization that has been rooting out corruption for decades, an organization that isn't afraid, an organization called Judicial Watch that you should be supporting. That's judicialwatch.org. Please support them. Follow them on Twitter at Judicial Watch. And they have a man there, former counterintelligence professional from the U.S. Army, who is the chief. He's the head of all their investigations, and we are very fortunate to have him with us today on America First. Chris Farrell, welcome back.
Great to be with you, Seb. Thanks very much.
Now, I'm going to ask a question like an ignorant immigrant, if I may, a legal immigrant, but an immigrant nonetheless. I thought having a national election where you decide in certain precincts to stop counting the votes at 9:30 at night, that's not what happens in developed democracies or republics. That's what happens in banana republics. Has America become one of those nations, Chris Farrell?
We have, because the rule of law is something that is for the little people, and not something that's consistently applied across all venues, with all parties equally having a shot at justice. Of course, no one is guaranteed justice, just a shot at it. And, months ago, we had a 22-page strategy paper written by an organization called the Transition Integrity Project that laid out exactly how they were going to disrupt the election. It laid out how they were going to sabotage vote counts, how they were going to introduce doubt and confusion into the electoral process, and then how they were going to exploit it to make sure that they were going to count and count and count and count and count until they got the number that elected Biden.
So they had a game plan. What should our response be? Allegedly in 36 minutes, Joe Biden, one of the most corrupt politicians in modern American history, is going to announce himself, declare himself the victor, with at least 4 key battleground states still in contention. Is this just a question of who has the toughest lawyers, or is there a larger role to play for more Americans than just sitting back and watching the legal battle royale, Chris?
Well, if there's ever a time for people to get out on the street and protest, this is it. Certainly, folks on the left have loved doing that, and they've been quite motivated and energetic in doing so. And, courts are manned by men and women who are subject to pressure and political sort of wind-checking and public sentiment, like any other group of people that are, they're government lawyers in black robes, right? Let's be clear about what judges are. And so, if people that support President Trump or folks on the right, whether it's a governor or a senator or a congressional election, if there's ever a time to make your point of view known in a loud and clear way, peacefully, respectfully, but nonetheless to exercise not just your vote, but the rest of your constitutional guaranteed rights, now is the time. And I can assure you that folks on the left are highly organized and ready to do whatever they can. And this is not a time to, sit back and watch television and hope it all works out.
Here's my concern. Tell me if you share it. You have fought the swamp for years now. You have done more as an organization, Judicial Watch, than the fifth branch of government has done in a century. And I mean, of course, the media. You have fought very hard. Individual FOIA requests that have taken you months, sometimes years, to get that information from inside the government. My worry is the following one. The president will not give up. The president is a fighter. He is the closer. However, my contention is the longer it takes to, quote unquote, count those outstanding ballots, the longer it takes to quote unquote certify the results from Arizona, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, the higher the chance of rampant and large scale voter fraud. How much is this?
You are 100% correct.
So this is a ticking clock function, correct?
Correct. And the longer you extend the window, the greater gamesmanship, the greater manipulation, the greater Tony shows up with the van and the 15 boxes of ballots that were suddenly found. This is where all the gamesmanship comes in. And frankly, the left is a lot smarter, a lot more organized, and a lot more efficient at exactly those sorts of electoral manipulations. And you can go all the way back to JFK and Chicago election returns, which is a now widely acknowledged corrupt practice that put JFK into office.
And do you have a measure? We're talking to Chris Farrell of Judicial Watch at Judicial Watch, judicialwatch.org. Do you have a measure looking at the last few years, looking at the president's tribulations with the propaganda assaults on him, the misinformation, disinformation of the Mueller probe, the Russia hoax? Do you have a sense of the quality of the bench of the lawyers that will be needed? And do you think that he has enough of the hard-bitten fighters available to him to actually win this in the various crooked courts around the country?
I have to just hope so. The problem is that in the end, decisions are made by judges. And so whether it's a district court level or an appellate court, or if it goes all the way to the Supreme Court, what happens is you end up taking the will of the people in a straight-up election. The process of the election itself is compromised, and now you're kicking it over into the hands, literally, of whether it's a single judge, a 3-judge panel at the appellate level, or the 9 justices of the Supreme Court. You're talking about a dozen people who will decide the fate of a presidential election. Yeah. And that is corrosive in the long term. It's been going on for 20 years. Judicial Watch, frankly, were the ones in the 2000 election that allowed public access to ballots in Florida. My colleague Paul Orphanides and I filed 67 Sunshine Act requests. Those are the Florida state open records laws in the 67 counties of Florida that had people looking at individual ballots, because in Florida, ballots are public records. And so all the hanging chads and the dimpled ballots that you heard about 20 years ago, frankly, that was started by Paul Orphanides and I. So we have lots and lots of experience with crooked elections. And, we know how this game is played. And like you said just a few moments ago, the longer you push the window out, the more mischief.
Whether it's Hillary's email server, whether it's Benghazi, whether it's hanging chads, who's going to be at the center of it all, fighting for truth, fighting for your liberties? Yeah, Judicial Watch. Follow them at Judicial Watch. With Judicial Watch's Chris Farrell. He is the man who was right there 20 years ago, checking out the suppression of voting, the, how shall I say this? What's Biden's favorite phrase? The malarkey, the shenanigans, basically the corruption that is endemic in certain jurisdictions in America. And I'm going to ask you a very simple question. The Army has a red teaming function where you try and think like the enemy to predict your vulnerabilities. How hard and what does it take to steal an election in America, Chris Farrell?
The strength and the weakness of the entire system is that it's all basically conducted at the county level. So, and counties are easily overwhelmed by mischief. It's normally a small staff, depending upon the size of the county. It could be 3 people or maybe 15 people that run a county election office. And so if you have targeted efforts to go in and disrupt what's going on at the county level, creating mischief, everything from overloading voting rolls to turning in late ballots, there's all sorts of ways of generating mischief. And you have a small rural county or a big urban county, you can get in there and create total chaos. those county results are then turned in at the state level and is ratified or certified by a Secretary of State of each of the individual states. Every state has their own laws and rules on how they do elections. There's a federal standard, but the details are left up to the state. And that's, again, a strength and a weakness. It's a strength because it's hard to monopolize it and figure it out, but it's a weakness because, again, it's small numbers, and if folks, principally on the left, frankly, look to manipulate and attack the system, there's ways of getting around it. There's three solutions to an election dispute. One is in the court, some kind of judicial intervention to preserve the election. The second is that in the case of someplace like Paterson, New Jersey, you simply order a new election where there's been total chaos or confusion. You say, you know what, do-over, try it again. And then the third option, and this is a congressional question, is that Congress can reject electors from various states because of questions about the legitimacy of the electors that are being sent to ratify the election.
Yeah, so we're talking about an internal function of the Electoral College?
Correct.
And what does that take? How can Congress, on what grounds can it reject an elector?
Well, you have to have some ability to articulate a claim that there's either an irregularity or that there's some illegitimacy to the people that are being sent by the states, and these are governors now who actually sort of commission and dispatch these folks, that there's some fraudulence to their representation or their legitimacy as electors. Those are the three ways to challenge it. In the courts, a new election for problem areas, and then the electors themselves can be challenged by Congress. And that's the level we're getting to. And I'm telling you, we really need, if there's ever a time for the American people to snap out of it, wake up, and make sure that their voices are heard loud and clear, now is the time. And it is not something to sit and watch television, cross your fingers, and hope it all turns out. This is not the day to do it.
Just listen to this man. If there was ever a time in your life, however old, however young you may be, to actually make a difference and not just be a spectator, just another rear echelon observer, it is now. It is the time to get out there, to protest, get that red MAGA hat on, and make it as hard as possible for them to steal your vote, because that's what they're doing. It's not about the president's election. It's about your election. It's about America's election. Support this superb organization, judicialwatch.org. Follow them on Twitter @JudicialWatch. We've been talking to Chris Farrell.